Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Artist Alchemy. Got an exciting show for you today with our good friend Gary S. Martinez, actor, musician, your basic Renaissance man. So we're excited to have Gary on the show with us today. Known Gary for many years, and we'll tell you more about our story and his great career in the theater. Good afternoon, Gary.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. So how's life for you in the time of COVID-19 over in Sonoma County?
Well, it could be a lot worse. I love where I live. I've got a nice backyard. I wander aimlessly. Um, I'm doing okay. The shelter in place is not that different from my life in general. I'm really not overly social. For some reason, I've gone inward as of late. But it's a little odd, a little soylent greenish to go out to a grocery store and everybody's masked and keeping the social distancing in play. But I'm doing okay. My brain is okay. I like to say it is what it is. Obey the rules, trust the scientists, try to stay out of the political aspects of it,
Yeah.
and be safe. Also, I have a relationship with a 97-year-old woman
Ah,
who I take care of. And I'm very concerned that if I pick anything up and it transfers to her, we're in big trouble. But generally, I'm doing good. I try to keep my spirits up.
good. Good for you. Good advice for all of us. I think it is a strange time, but it's funny you talk about being a little bit of a kind of a homebody and becoming a bit of an introvert. And I've talked to a lot of people that are kind of in the same boat. Those of us who are out in the public eye or on stage in your case, and sometimes you just as soon not be. So the sheltered in place is kind of a nice respite.
Well, yeah,
Ah,
it's quite a bit different from the public self. I do have a public self, and the private self is something that only lately I've been able to kind of delve into. But I have found that I am not my best friend. you know, being alone most of the time sometimes brings up personal demons that have been kept at bay, uh, and my brain go. I talk to myself a lot more. What a surprise!
good
Uh,
company.
no, well, yeah, except I have terrible jokes. I mean, it's an odd situation because a lot of the extrovert that is part of the career choice is not really necessary, uh, and other things come into my brain, not in a bad way, but
Yeah, yeah.
it, you got to be introspective if you're all alone. That makes sense.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of extroverts and other actors we've known and loved, we were talking before we went on air and about our mutual friend. The reason we know each other is our dear departed friend Mark Volan, great actor, musician. He was my best friend growing up in Los Angeles, and his whole family were involved in the arts. His mom was an opera singer. Dad was originally a stage actor in New York, came out to LA, and then appeared on every sitcom I think there was back in the 70s and early 80s. And if we had a picture of Herb, folks would go, "Oh, that guy. He's one of those character actors that everybody knew and loved." And so we met through Mark. Mark left LA after getting his undergrad degree at Cal State Northridge, went back to Michigan State University in Lansing, Michigan. And you're a Bay Area guy, and you two met working on his MFA, and you were working on a doctorate in theater, I think, there at Michigan State.
That is true. Hard to believe, but yes. And Mark was one of the first people I met. The session in 1977, the fall session that began school, I was offered a summer gig starting in June. So I showed up brand new, didn't know anybody, didn't have a place to live, was sleeping in my van for about a week until I could find housing. But I was part of this Summer Circle Free Festival. It was an outdoor festival, beautiful stage that they built in a courtyard. And one of the first people I met was Mark Volan. Of course, we connected on the California aspect of our lives, but also he was a prankster, a punster, sharp wit, and kind of had this disrespect for the theater that I loved. He did. you know, he didn't necessarily like being in the limelight. For him, it was a job. And of course, he was going to grad school as well. But he had this kind of ne'er-do-well sense of theater as opposed to, I'm a great artiste. And he and I connected on that level and got along great.
Part of that probably came from growing up with his mom and dad. Dad was on the stage all the time in New York. He was used to that environment, so he was sort of matter of fact about it, kind of businesslike. I mean, he did the art part, I think, very well. We can all agree, but yeah, it was like a job, not to be taken for granted. But it's like, all right, no big deal. I'm here to do a job and maybe have some fun along the way. So
absolutely, and lest we forget. Mark's dad, Herb Voland, who was the client on Bewitched, who was in I Dream of Jeannie, who appeared as one of the frightened people in the Munsters. I mean, you would recognize the face. He did have his own series called Love on a Rooftop, right, if you remember. And I think that ran maybe 1 season or 2 seasons. And Herb was best known as General Clayton on MASH, the first couple of seasons of MASH. He was the one who had the hots for hot lips, kind of the squinty-eyed, bulldog-looking guy. Yes. I was able to meet him, of course, and just what a sweet man who loved his son. He loved Mark. He came out to Michigan to visit and, would take us out to dinner, and he was just a sweet guy, great guy.
And he loved educational theater. I know when we were in high school together and doing theater festivals, the LA Unified School District had a very, I'm sure still does, very robust theater kind of competition program. Fall would be all Shakespeare. Spring would be open to pretty much any scenes up to 10 minutes long, monologues. And Herb would always assemble a great group of judges to help with the program. He would judge himself. He'd always recuse himself if one of us came up, but he'd bring in all these great actor buddies of his, and they'd help with the judging for the drama festivals in LA. So he was very, very committed to the art and craft of acting. So,
and that was reflected in Mark's upbringing in the theater, as well as his sense of it's a job, as we were just speaking of, kind of nuts and bolts. And I think Herb passed that on to Mark.
No, absolutely. It was great times, great being at the house and meeting so many wonderful actors that would come over for social events and bridge games. Elsa Lancaster, Estelle Winwood, Rich Little from Love on a Rooftop, Paul Lynn, just all these great people that Herb was working with at the time. And as you mentioned before we went on, when I'd mentioned LA on a couple of occasions, this was back in the late 70s, early 80s, I guess. My nickname then was Dread. Not many people know me as Dread these days. That was the abbreviation of my first initial, David D, and my last name, which is R-E-A-D, which became Dread somewhere in high school, and Mark called me Dread until he left us. And that's kind of a fun little side note here. So
I never knew your real name.
Right, David. Who the hell
associated you as David? Only
who is David Reed?
Yeah.
Well, so there we are, back in then, and God, I hate to say this, but 35, almost 40 years later, and I haven't seen you or talked to you in decades. So in the meantime, I moved back to Washington, D.C. for 20 years, raised my children, come back to California in 2009, and getting involved in, still working full time, traveling a great deal. And of course, I love the local theater scene here in Yuba Sutter, but also in Sacramento. And so I'm off 1 week, weeknight, or I don't know what day it was, but down in Sacramento at the Sacramento Theater Company, seeing a production of It's a Wonderful Life. And I'm sitting there looking on stage, and there's this guy in a wheelchair and the blanket being the crotchety old Mr. Potter. And I go, that's very interesting. This guy looks vaguely familiar. I look at the program, go, Gary Martinez. Gary Martinez rings a dim gong. And, of course, at intermission, I send a note backstage. I said, Gary, if that's you, Dread is here. I'm in the audience. Love to see you afterwards. So, and there you are, as pictured on the screen now, working with another local well-known actor, Michael R.J. Campbell, who was also in the show. So my worlds, kind of collided there, the new local and this old connection from years before. We met afterwards and just had a great reunion, reconnected about Mark and missing him, and we've been in touch ever since.
It's funny, very coincidental. But as soon as I got the note from Dread, I knew exactly who you were, and I was very much looking forward after the show to come check you out. Yeah, that was fun. And Michael RJ and I did a number of shows together. Pirates of Penzance. What else did we do?
Cinderella.
Cinderella. It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life. The musical was brought back at least 2 Christmases, maybe 3 Christmases. And RJ was great fun to be with. He was one of those guys who liked to be in the limelight, kind of separate from Roland, and prided himself on buying drinks for everyone and being benevolent and very, very huggy, a very huggy, tactile kind of friend. On stage, wonderful and supportive, and he was very much involved in the School for the Arts run by Sacramento Theater Company, and was a brilliant leader and a brilliant teacher. Of course, his mom running the theater company in Marysville, Yuba City.
Foster here in Yuba City, the acting company. Yeah.
So I guess he had a sense of a rapport with youth that he put to great effect there in Sacramento.
Yeah, the acting company here has a great youth theater program, Magic Theater, and lots of classes and performances. So he grew up in that environment of, kind of giving back to the next generation. So,
exactly.
Well, it was so fun seeing both of you. And Cinderella, when he came out as, what was he, the evil godmother, right? And he comes out channeling. Yeah. And I always thought he was kind of channeling Dame Edna. Oh, possum, and he does this. It's like, oh my God, I lost it. Absolutely.
Oh, he was wonderful in that role. As a matter of fact, I had the great honor of helping him adjust his bra. I shared a dressing room with him, and he'd turn around. Can you snap me in? I think he. Is
that on your resume?
I think he named his breasts Cheech and Chong. I'm serious. It was nothing but fun.
Oh, incredible. You did a lot of other work in Sacramento, both at STC, and I saw you in the Fantastics, in the smaller theater. Incredible space.
Yeah, that was a fun show.
Oh.
That was a fun show with Jerry Lee.
Yeah.
And then, I was able to, the picture you're looking at now was a repeat of the Fantastics, but this production was at Sierra Rep in Sonora. And I got to repeat the same role. It was a big stretch for me, a broken down Shakespearean actor on his last legs. It took a lot out of me. I had to dig deep into my psyche. You can only imagine.
I saw somebody's video of you resting on the rehearsal room or the green room floor, doing, lamenting that this was a stretch as an actor for you to play older actor.
Very, very tough.
Great fun. So you've worked at Capitol Stage. You mentioned Sierra Rep, and just amazing.
Capitol Stage was wonderful to me. It started out, it turns out that the artistic director, Jonathan Williams, I gave his first paid acting job to at Northside Theater Company, where I was development director and also did a number of other things. I funded a children's theater tour, and I produced and directed Reynard the Fox and hired Jonathan Williams as Reynard. 15 years go by. He's not a kid anymore. He's the artistic director of a company in Sacramento. I auditioned for Misery, which is the stage adaptation of the Stephen King novel, and I was cast, and he directed the show, and it's just funny how things turn out, after X number of years. And then
that whole networking thing, it's true in the business, like so many other aspects of our lives. Yeah,
big time. At an earlier part of my career in Los Angeles in the late 60s, it was all, I didn't succeed as well in terms of film work and media work because I just felt so phony playing the
Mm.
game of who you know and how many names you can remember and which cast party you go to, and which home in the Hollywood Hills you'd end up in a hot tub with, 50-year-old hairy chested, gold chained men. It was, well, people go, oh, female casting couch. Make no mistake, there was a male casting couch as well. And I just
Interesting.
didn't fit in. You go to a party, a huge party, and I won't tell too many tales out of school, but
Yeah.
you go to a huge party in the Hollywood Hills, surrounded by great looking women, just beautiful men, the hoi polloi of Hollywood. And the party would start about 10. And about 11 o'clock, fewer women were there. And then about midnight, there were fewer women there. And then at about 1 o'clock, just about the time everyone was pretty well looped or otherwise intoxicated, you'd look around and it's like all the women are gone. And it's just the guys. And then your agent, who would accompany you to this Hollywood Hills party, would say, oh, yeah, you're up for a role in this and this. And, tell you what, one of the producers is actually in the hot tub right now. Don't know, but you may want to just go in there and talk shop with him. And that's how a lot of actors got their break. Sit
Mm.
in the hot tub with the producers at, at
Who
one
knew?
o'clock in the morning. I don't know what went on. I never indulged myself, but I knew actors who did, and they got a bit, they got a couple of lines in a movie and never
Yeah.
worked again.
Well, we'll look forward to reading your tell-all memoir someday. But
Well, also that was the Manson summer, but we don't have
oh,
that. That was Charlie Summer of July and August of 1969, and
wow.
that takes us back to Topanga Canyon, where he used to live, and of course the 1003050 Cielo Drive with the Tate LaBianca homicides. It was a crazy time, and I was right
Wow.
there in Hollywood Hills.
Right in the middle of it. Gee. Well, Gary, you grew up in a. We never talked much about this, but in a theatrical family, or was it just your mom, or others in the family that?
Well, it was basically my mom. My mom went to Pasadena, attended Pasadena Playhouse in
Oh,
19. Yeah, there we are. We were on the cover of the Arts magazine in San Jose Mercury, going like mother, like son. I did not know that Mama was taking the picture with rabbit ears behind me. Funny shot. But yeah, she graduated from Pasadena Playhouse in 1949. She did a couple
wow.
USS Steel Hour, a couple of dramas where she had a few lines. And then when she moved to San Francisco, she was on live television on the Les Malloy show.
Hmm.
He was kind of a local radio celebrity, and then in the early days of television, had a variety show. And people go, oh, well, you grew up in a theatrical family. Of course you became an actor. The truth is, I became an actor because my mom on the weekends would be doing a show, a performance, usually for Commedia Repertory Theater in Menlo Park, California. I had, at that time, 5 brothers and sisters,
Hmm.
and if you weren't in the show, you had to babysit your brothers and sisters in the back of a Ford Falcon station wagon. So if I if there was a kid part in any of the plays that mom was doing, I would raise my hand and I would want to do it because I didn't like diapering my brothers and sisters in the back of a Ford Falcon station wagon. That's the truth.
So is that when you became serious about being an actor as an avoidance technique?
Yeah, exactly. Actor by default.
Yeah.
Uh, no, I think I knew probably when I was like 8 or 9 that this was something I wanted to do and I wanted to pursue as a career. Believe it or not, that young.
Wow.
I took over for Colin Higgins, who wrote 9 to 5, who was famous for Harold and Maude. went
Wow.
on to have a great career. The Higgins family lived in San Carlos, and Colin Higgins was playing Jack in Jack and the Beanstalk for the Children's Theater Company in Menlo Park. He had to drop out for some reason. I was offered the role. I went into rehearsal with him. And because I lived in San Jose, I could take the Greyhound bus
Mm.
to Menlo Park, and the theater would pay for the bus. Well, whenever a relative came and saw the show, they would drive me back home, and I could keep the money that I had gotten for the bus. I was a professional actor. I was 8 years old. I said, "Oh, I can do this. This is fun, and I'm getting paid."
I
So
like.
I knew pretty early that this was something I wanted to pursue. Yeah.
So you've been an equity card holder for 40 some years. I mean, how did that happen? That's sort of one of the holy grails I know for an actor is you can actually get that union affiliation. What was your equity story?
Well, I was very lucky. I graduated from Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles in 1974. No, 1972. I had actually done a third year abroad program where I spent a year in London studying at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. I mean, what are
Wow.
the odds? So I had a skill set that I was able to garner a scholarship to the University of Minnesota for my MFA, and the University of Minnesota was working in collaboration with the Guthrie Theater there in Minneapolis. If you completed the 2 years, you got your MFA, you would audition to become a company member at the Guthrie Theater. I
Wow.
did so, I was accepted, and I
Mm.
signed an equity apprentice contract. I don't think they even have them anymore, in 1974, and pretty much worked ever since.
Wow.
46 years in the union. I want to clearly state that I am very, very appreciative and very, very lucky to have
Mm.
been able to work as an actor over these many years. I mean,
Mm.
I've had my share of rejection, but to actually have a career, I'm collecting a pension as an actor, working in the arts in the United States. The odds are kind of stacked against you, and I am very appreciative, and I understand how lucky I am. Yeah, I was a hustler. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got turned down a lot, but I consider myself very fortunate,
Well,
and I want to give back. You know,
and you have, and we've experienced that here locally. And but to your point about being a hustler, what's that old line about, the harder I worked, the luckier I got? And I think you're a good example of that. And there were some fun times along the way, but you stayed focused, and you had a pretty diverse portfolio, I think, of talent, and shared it along the way. So
performances. The Guthrie, I had, acted nonstop after graduate school for almost 2 years. Nonstop 2 years. I said, I'm done.
mm,
I had an opportunity to help start when I got off the tour. I had an opportunity to start a restaurant in the uptown area of Minneapolis, and I
mm,
didn't act for almost 2 years.
wow.
I bought a 100-acre farm in northern Minnesota for $22,600. A 100-acre farm with a 3-bedroom house. Can you believe it?
Wow.
And I learned the craft of writing grants because I wanted to continue to work in the arts. And these smaller rural communities of northern Minnesota, they had a museum, or they had a community theater, or maybe they had an arts group for creative arts and graphic arts and painting. I was able to write the Minnesota State Arts Board for grants, the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council for grants, in order to fund myself. I would write a
Wow.
grant for an arts to a summer theater. Well, geez, who
Brilliant.
are they going to hire as artistic director but myself? And then I was able to use those grants writing skills when I got back to California in 1984. Shortly thereafter, I joined Northside Theater Company as their development director. where I met Jonathan Williams, who hired me for Misery.
Right.
And I worked for, I got on, I'm not even sure how it happened, but I was offered a chance to appear on public television, KTEH TV, San Jose Public Television, where I hosted Monday Science and Information Night. And I was just the guy between the programs to introduce the programs. And then they offered me the chance to do something that really changed my life on PBS. I was for 6 or 7 years, the host of the Midnight Movies.
Oh.
So I was able to, and that was 6 nights a week. Of course, they were all taped, in one day, but I was seen 6 times a week.
Wow.
In the late night slot. And I love doing research on the movies, on the kind of the seedy underbelly of what was going on during the filming of a particular movie. And that brought me to the attention of the executive producer of KTEH, Tom Fenella, rest in peace, no longer with us. And I told him I write grants. I've done fundraising. Said, yeah, you're just an actor. And after about 2 years of reminding him, I write grants, I do fundraising and those special events, he said, well, let's put you on as a grants writer. And so for 6 months, I was working as a grants writer and happily knew enough connections from Northside Theater Company within the funding community that I was able to garner $150,000, $200,000 for KTH within the first 6 months.
And this is back then, bigger dollars today. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was able to work at San Jose Stage as an equity actor. I mean, I was working 16 hours a day. No joke.
Wow.
I would take a half day off on Sundays. But I was able to earn enough funding for public television that he gave me a directorship. And I became the director of community development and stayed with KTEH, which then became Silicon Valley Public Television for 16 years.
Wow.
So, yes, I stayed in the arts, but I did not primarily make my living as an actor. I also was a early learning training through the arts artist with the Wolf Trap Foundation out of Virginia.
Yeah.
David Lucille Packard Foundation funded this program that put artists in preschool settings to help build self-esteem, as well as color identification, numbers, preschool education through the arts. And that kept me busy, in addition to doing equity work for at least a couple of years.
Was Sesame Street on at that point, or?
Oh, you bet. Well,
okay, so you were, yeah.
Yeah, well, I was one of the first funders. Silicon Valley Public Television was one of the first recipients of the outreach materials generated around Plaza Sésamo, which was the Spanish version of Sesame Street. So we kind of became the control group experiment for educational outreach tied to that program within the Spanish-speaking communities. And I was able to garner funds for that and get that going. So I had youth in my life. It was sad in a way because the early learning training through the arts program, there was outreach into the communities and preschool centers. In one case in Cupertino, it would be a preschool with their own stage and beautiful playground. And then I was also sent to preschool sites in East Oakland, which was basically the grandma down the road in her garage.
Right.
The kids of the working parents.
Wow.
Some of whom were addicted to narcotics. So I'll never forget singing songs with a group of 3 and 4-year-olds and looking into the face of a 3-year-old boy who looked like he was in his 90s. He was a crap baby. And the bag out of the eyes and almost gray hair. It was,
boy, that's pretty grassroots stuff.
It was. It was a big part of my life.
Gee. So you're no stranger to arts and education and that kind of work and the whole business development piece. And Let's jump back just a little bit and talk about more of your work and your on stage or on camera work. So I just because I'm dreadfully afraid of forgetting, I'd be very remiss if I didn't talk about your encounter with Darth Vader. Should we do that? Talk about you and the Vader. Hey, look at that.
Hey, there he is. LucasArts was very good to me. It was just, I think I had an agent at that point and was set up for an audition. Of course, I knew Star Wars. Uh, Not a huge fan, but I was certainly aware of how popular the series was. And the first time that George Lucas allowed new live action Star Wars footage to be shot was for a game called Rebel Assault 2. And they were looking for a smarmy Brit. That was that was the description of the role I was auditioning for. And so I put on a very terse look with a scowl of superiority and would recite, "The rebel fighters are in range, my lord. Sigma Squadron stands ready, awaiting your command." Just this smarmy sleazoid. And I got cast. I got cast as Admiral Sarn. It was filmed in a studio in Mill Valley that was not far away from the Creature Shop, which was the shop that hosted all of George Lucas's fun props and sketches. It was all done on green screen.
Oh.
So Darth Vader was live in costume. I was live in costume, but I had to imagine the inside of a spaceship. I was the guy who reported back to Darth Vader what they call cut scenes. So you play the game, you have an intro. I was in the intro. I was sent on an assignment. I took off for the assignment, and then the player gets to play the game, and then and complete a particular mission, and then it would go back to me, and I would report on the success of the mission to Darth Vader. And the last cutscene, I actually got to die in the death grip of Darth Vader. And that was, "You have disappointed me for the last time." It was like, I hit the deck. So I had the distinct honor of being killed by Darth Vader in his death grip. That was a fun time. That was fun. And that, strangely enough, led to being cast in Howard the Duck, which was another 6 weeks of my life that was nothing but fun. Interesting story about that. So I'm on the set of Howard the Duck, being filmed in a studio. Can't remember where that was. Somewhere in San Francisco, I think. And Leah Thompson, the lead female, very famous, was playing the lead role. And I told her, first of all, you're not supposed, I was a glorified extra. You're not supposed to go up to the star and start a conversation. We were between shots, and she was near me, and I kind of broke the rule, and I looked at her and I said, "I know you don't know who I am, but I saw you dance as a little girl with the Minnesota Dance Company." True, she was probably 12 or 13, and her eyes lit up, and she said, "Oh my God, I remember. And I told her that I was an actor at the Guthrie Theater, and she said, "Oh, my boyfriend was at the Guthrie Theater." I'm like, "Really?" I said, "In 1974, 75? She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, he must have been a little kid." She said, "Yeah." His name was James Newcomb. Little Jimmy Newcomb was not the infant, but was the juvenile of the company of actors at the Guthrie Theater. And I said, "Oh, that's funny. Of course I know him. I did a number of shows with him." I said, "I remember one time at the end of a performance, we were all getting ready to go home, and I saw the light under his dressing room door. I opened up the door, and he was there playing Spin the Bottle with a cute little girl. And he had missed his ride home, and I ended up giving him a ride home." Leah said, "Do you know who that little girl was?" That was me.
How fun.
It was nothing but fun, and she was very sweet to me for the rest of the shoot. But what are the odds of that ever happening? That was a fun.
I love that. I love that small world stuff. Like you and me, for example.
Yeah,
Here we
exactly.
are. Here we are, chatting about theater. Oh, I love it. I love it. So, so another fun project you worked on, what was it, 10 or 11 years ago? A short film, what, 30 minutes or so, D Mechanics. And I know it's on Vimeo. I finally got to see it a while back. And
Okay.
fascinating little sort of surrealistic take on the mechanical players from Midsummer Night's Dream. Talk about that. Some of it I know was filmed in San Francisco, and it's fun to see you over there. And what was that all about?
Strangely enough, the rude mechanicals from Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, we were all performers with San Francisco Shakespeare Festival that summer. The actual cast of Rude Mechanicals from the production in the park, Free Shakespeare in the Park in San Francisco, was reunited for this film takeoff of the Rude Mechanicals called Die Mechanics. Of course, it was fully scripted, but it was scripted in gibberish. If you
Right.
remember, David,
Germish, yeah. Or what?
so a lot of the dialogue was improvised in terms of what language we used, but we knew what we were supposed to be communicating.
Yeah.
It was shot in like, oh my God, maybe 3 days with maybe 2 days of post production. And we went out to Misfits Flat, where they filmed the movie The Misfits.
As in the Misfits, right?
And it was out in the middle of nowhere. It was 104 degrees. We were dressed in black. It was a tough shoot, and it went well into the night. So you go from 104 degrees in the sun to literally 40 degrees, shivering at night. But that was part of the Scary Cow Film Festival. I don't know if they still exist, but it was a coalition of independent filmmakers and producers and scriptwriters and actors called Scary Cow. And I think each one, paid a membership. And then they had a big film festival of all of the films that were made under their auspices at the Castro Theater. And the top winner would get $10,000 towards the budget of the next film. Second, $5,000, $2,500. And actually, we went to the opening of the festival, and our film won the festival.
Wow.
That was fun. Yeah, I felt like a celebrity. I think I wore dark sunglasses and kind of played the role on the red carpet. And they had not a lot of media coverage, but they had the paparazzi. It was fun. And
it's great fun.
And you can see it for free on Vimeo. DIE for D. Mechanics is MEKANIKS. Check it
For all
out.
you independent film enthusiasts out there, and there are quite a few in our community, do take a look. It's a fascinating piece. It's got some great production values, wonderful actors, of course, and yeah, it's neat. It's great fun, and obviously people that really wanted to be part of the project. So great to see that. I know,
a big stretch for me playing a broken down Shakespearean actor.
Again, I know, yeah, I know. You obviously prepare. I would never have known that you were actually, 24 when you did that film. You look much older, so good job. You mentioned the Guthrie and work in LA, and I know you've worked in the foothills here and back in Massachusetts. You've done some work outside the country too, Gary. Talk about some of those productions.
Once again, fortuitous fortune, happened to be in the right place at the right time. I had completed my studies at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in 1971. I got together with some friends and bought a Eurail pass and was playing around in Europe, going through France and Germany and Italy. And the group that I was with, there were maybe 4 or 5 of us, we weren't getting along, and I wasn't having much fun, and I was away from my girlfriend. So I sold my Eurail pass and came back to London, where I had stored my stuff, where I had been living while attending RADA. And there was a mailogram for me. Who would send a letter? Who even knows that I'm here, let alone my address? There was very little communication. Opened up the mailogram, and it said, "You have been recommended by one of the teachers of at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art to join my English Summer Theatre School program, which performs at the Edinburgh Festival.
Oh my
If you
gosh.
can perform within the next 2 days, we'd love to offer you a scholarship." Well,
Wow.
I could have come back any time. I was within the 2 days. I immediately went to the post office and fed the meter to call back to the United States, and was able to hook up the very next day with a program that was, I think, 6 or 7 weeks, and included a performance at the Edinburgh Festival, acting workshops at the Sybil Thorndike Theatre in Leatherhead, as well as the Yvonne Arnaud Theatre in Guildford. Wonderful program, great opportunity. What are the odds that I had decided to leave Europe to come back? And then 2 years, maybe 3 years later, I won the Irene Ryan Acting Award from I got to perform at the JFK Center in Washington, D.C.
Fabulous Palace of the Arts.
Oh, it was an incredible place. And I won a scholarship for, I think, $1,000. And I went back to the program offered through the University of Washington in Seattle, this English Summer Theatre School program, and said, "I have $1,000. I'll give you half of it if you hire me to come back." And they said, "Absolutely." So I was able to repeat the program with a better understanding of the dynamics of the workshop, and perform and direct at the Edinburgh Festival. 1978, maybe.
One of the greatest arts festivals of all time. Is it ongoing? Do you know? I haven't looked up. It has ceased, right?
Well, in this pandemic situation, I don't know, but yes,
Yeah.
they have their regular series, 7:30 to 10 o'clock, and then there's a break where everybody goes to the pubs, and then they have a late night series. And the second time I was there, we had a very popular, very well-reviewed musical review called Vaudeville USA, and that went from like 10:45 until midnight.
Wow.
And we played packed audiences. It was nothing but fun. My time at the Edinburgh Festival was very fortunate.
Living the dream. Indeed, you bear a charmed life.
Oh, I do. And once again, I know how rare it is, and I'm very appreciative. I've been able to return to a place on Lago de Chapala in Jalisco, Mexico, called Ajijic, Ajijic, and work with someone I went to school with at the University of Minnesota, Jamie Littlejohn, who runs the Bravo Theater Company. I've taught workshops for them, and most recently, just this last holiday season, I was there for 7 weeks directing every Christmas story ever told, which I performed a number of times at Capitol Stage. So,
oh my gosh, wow,
yeah, very lucky.
A citizen of the world. That's just fabulous. I want to talk a little bit more before we wrap up here, just about some of the work you've done with us here. Last 2 years, I think you've come to town and stayed here at the house, and you've been out in the schools working with our high school students as a poetry out loud coach. For those of you who may not know, this is an ongoing program developed by the National Endowment for the Arts many years ago. In fact, Dana Gioia, former California Poet Laureate, started it as one of his pet projects. It basically involves high school students committing to memorize a poem, or in the case of state or county champions, 3 poems, and then reciting them before an audience. So we conduct programs in the high schools to get the students excited and get them involved. and then provide coaching, which is what Gary's been doing, going into the classrooms or the libraries, getting a group of students together and just kind of getting them excited. Now, some of them participate just to get out of writing an essay, but we always find some gems. They pick their poem and then come out in front of Gary. They recite, and he coaches them, guides them through, the line readings or just a better understanding of what the words mean. So Gary's done a great job of that for us at some of the schools.
Well, that's the difference between recitation of a poem and interpretation. So I want them to bring something of themselves and their take on the material as opposed to just reciting the words. So we always would start out with some sort of brain games, the first 5 or 10 minutes, just to loosen people up, loosen the group up. And then we'd get 1 or 2 of them up to begin reciting their poem. And I'd ask them, well, how do you feel about this? Where do you want to take your pause? Which word is the operative word in this particular sentence? To try and help them make the words come off the page and into their frame of mind in such a way that they effectively communicate to the judges. And I love working with the kids. Some are more responsive than others, but I thank you very much, David, for having me come on board and coach with that Poetry Out Loud program. I look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely. We and it's just always such a joy to watch you work with the students. And of course, some of them are, quite terrified of standing in front of a group. And I think you help get them over that, in addition to understanding the words and making the presentation, as you said, more of a not just a recitation, but an interpretation, and walking them through those steps as you would preparing for a role of any kind as an actor, and bringing that experience to the program. I think it's really made a difference for some of the kids. 2 years ago, we had the young lady who was the winner from Sutter County. You actually wound up doing some one-on-one coaching once she was chosen as the county champion. You also coached the Yuba County champion. The Sutter County champion went on at the state level, and I think she didn't finish first, but she came into the top 5. So we were very proud of that, and thank you for your guidance in that process. So
she was wonderful to work with. If you remember, she took my direction and little tweaking very seriously and made it her own. And she was wonderful to work with. I remember giving her a big hug afterwards and going, hey, I wish you the best of luck. And she went on to compete quite well against
she did. She did great, absolutely great at the state level, and we were so proud. And as we are of all the students that participate. This year, of course, the whole thing was virtual. Each county had to send in a video of the county champions to the folks at the California Arts Council to run the program. And then the judges had reviewed the videos and then made their selections based on those video presentations. And of course, that's the way of the world right now. It's all video, it's all virtual, and not the same as getting in front of a crowd there at that beautiful California State Library auditorium and making their presentation. But we got through it. We did it. Our kids did great, and we're so thankful to you. You also came up, I think it was 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and were the keynote speaker for our inaugural artist in residence program. We brought in Leila Rivera, our visual artist in residence, Marcela Hernandez Castillo, our poet in residence, and Gay Galvin, who's our musician in residence. And you spoke about some of your experiences being an artist in residence, as you've described a little bit already on the program. So we were so pleased to have you speak to the assembly.
Always happy to do whatever I can for Yuba Arts. They've been very good to me. You've been very good to me. Both you and Abby have been excellent host and hostess. You feed me well, and I look forward to working with you.
You just come here now because we got the Hard Rock Casino down the street. Come on now.
Come on.
We had a great lunch. We had a great lunch that day, right?
Stop by.
Hey, you've worked a lot with young people, as we know, all ages, and you also coach adults. We're trying to get an adult acting class going with you at some point here the next year, and you've done quite a bit of work in that regard as well.
Yeah, this particular workshop that I would love to to lead there in Yuba Sutter counties is called Creating a Character. And it's basically devised to add tools to an actor to create a character. How many times do you see a show in community theater and otherwise, and you go, "Oh, John, he's always so funny," or "Oh, Betty, she's such a comedian," and but basically they're playing themselves. This workshop, Creating a Character, is actually a set of tools to build a character, to change where your center of gravity is, to lower your voice, to, as if you were a piece of clay molding the character based on the text. It's not highfalutin. It's very active. I do not lecture. Believe it or not, I don't talk much. We do. And by doing, you walk away with a sense of, oh, I can actually be somebody else. And it's been very successful. And I've taught it for almost 20 years now in various forms. It's a good workshop. I'd love to bring it to you.
We want to try again. Let's get through the madness here, and we'll get something scheduled. We're also looking forward to getting you involved on your business development and some of your grant writing insights as we get more involved with the Sutter Theater Project. We've talked about that. A lot of exciting things happening there, and just a lot of opportunity here. And we want to take advantage of your unique experience in so many different areas. Gosh, got to be keep a little conscious of time. The time flies, doesn't it?
Fun. Yeah,
absolutely. Just a couple of general questions, and then we'll get into that good meaty, those final 10 that we love to finish with. So I know you're a great student of the theater and actors and film. What actors or directors do you particularly admire these days, or who's inspired you, whether they're current or past generations?
I've always had a great respect for those actors who can slip into the skin of their characters. There are certain actors that we all know that go, "Oh, I love his work," but basically he's always the same. I was greatly influenced by the work of Dustin Hoffman. Remember going from Benjamin in The Graduate to Ratso Rizzo,
Midnight Cowboy.
Just an incredible transformation. And I've admired his work for a long, long time. Funny, Marlon Brando is almost always Marlon Brando, but it brought a sense of, the method actor feeling what it's feeling in a deep, deep, deep way. He's been able, by the way, Mark Volman did an incredible.
Oh, I know. I still do. I do Mark doing Brando. How did things ever get so bad? I don't know. That the Taglia family killed my son Santino.
That's good. Yeah. That's good.
We gotta love it.
Yeah. But Marlon Brando brought that sense of working from the inside out.
Yeah.
You can work objectively from the outside in. You can work subjectively from the inside out. I like to mesh the two in terms of creating a character. But I'd say Marlon Brando and Dustin Hoffman.
Good. Oh, favorites of mine. It's funny you mentioned the outside in. I always heard that was kind of Olivier's thing. Hey, it's just technique. Forget all that motivation crap. It's tradesmanship, craftsmanship. So I love that. I love those conversations, that esoteric stuff about the art of acting. Oh, beautiful stuff. So what do you do when you're not doing theater, Gary?
Well, for a long time, I was a singer-songwriter, and I wrote preschool children's songs along with that Wolf Trap Foundation preschool work that I did. And some of those songs are still being sung today in preschool settings. Unfortunately, I don't get a dime because they were under the auspices of the Wolf Trap Foundation, who owns them all. But I do some songwriting now. Now I'm in semi-retirement. I'm not taking every gig down the line. I'm pretty choosy about what I do.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate to be able to do that. I garden. I have a property, a couple acres, with a small home in the gold country. near Jackson. I spent a lot of time there, just being there, walking through the woods, raking, burning leaves, taking care of the property. That keeps me pretty busy.
Sweet, sweet. Before our final 10, what show would you that you never did would you like to have done or still like to do? Given a magic wand, if you will.
Without a doubt, The Dresser.
Oh God, really? Was that a
Right.
stage play before the film, or?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ronald Harwood, I believe, wrote The Dresser, and it was performed on stage before it was the Albert Finney, Tom Courtenay film. Once again, a broken down Shakespeare actor, modeled on Donald Wolfett, I believe, is the Brit. If you can remember the movie where Albert Finney stops that train and the train stops. It's a great stage play, and I would love to do that before I kick. So The Dresser.
Great, great, great. Did you do Long Day's Journey? Speaking of actors, did you ever do?
I'm not a huge fan of Eugene O'Neill.
You're not an O'Neill guy. Interesting, interesting.
Yeah. He did a series of short plays, one acts called the Sea Plays, and it's one of them, and I enjoyed those.
Yeah.
The 3.5 hour Sir James Tyrone, great role, but
I know it's pretty self-indulgent, you know.
Yeah, God knows I'm not that.
I've seen it several times. It's interesting. My one big encounter with O'Neill was in college. I played Cornelius Melody, a former general in the service of Napoleon. This is pretty obscure. It's called A Touch of the Poet.
Oh, okay.
This old drunk, and he's in Boston now. He's a barkeep, and he was constantly reliving his former glory with Napoleon. And he is just off the charts. And he walks around quoting Lord Byron because he's got a touch of the poet in him. It was great fun. Great.
Nothing to do with the film by Jean Cocteau.
No.
Okay.
There is a film version with Eric Portman, but this is interesting. It's this obscure O'Neill piece, big, full on, 2.5 hours. An epic Irish family, fallen from grace. All the good elements that we like in O'Neill.
I don't know that one. I don't know it.
Acting company here locally is doing Wilderness.
Oh, that's a good show.
Which I've never seen. David Wheeler, who's one of the legendary local directors, former head of the Yuba College theater department, is going to be doing it, coming out of retirement. He does that once or twice a year, so we're looking forward to seeing that.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Last but certainly not least, it's our weekly homage to our dear departed friend James Lipton, who, as many people know, ran the Actors Studio in New York for many, many years.
Rest in peace.
That's good stuff. And on his Inside the Actors Studio TV program on Bravo, he always finished his interviews with 10 questions that he asked each actor. So whether it's an actor we're talking to, a musician, we don't care. It's an artist series of questions, and we like to borrow from the best. So without further ado, Gary, what is your favorite word?
Manifest.
I like it. What is your least favorite word?
Invulnerable.
Oh. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Delving into the dark side.
What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Invulnerability.
I detect a theme. What is your favorite curse word?
Are you sure? You ready for it? It's actually 5 words.
Okay.
Caca-head. Poo-poo caca-head.
Been hanging around too many young actors. What sound or noise do you love?
Giggling baby.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Hydraulic drill.
What profession, other than your own, would you like to attempt?
Singer-songwriter.
What profession would you not like to pursue?
Chemistry.
Hmm. And finally, last but certainly not least, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You were never guilty of original sin. Sorry that you were brought up by Catholic nuns who showed you pictures of children screaming, burning in the flames of hell. I'm not a bad guy. Come on in.
Good. I like that. Gary Martinez, it's been an absolute delight. Where did the hour go? I've learned a lot today, and I look forward to our future collaboration and discussion and more fun here in YubaSutter.
You and Abby and Sam do a great job. Please, everyone, support Sutter Arts. You're darn lucky to have these guys at the helm.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah.
Stay safe, be well, best to you and yours. And as always, we thank our technical support team, producer Abby Cecina, technical director Sam Cecina. Next up, we're going to have a special guest interviewer for you, our good friend Justin France. A lot of people know him as a great chef, restaurant owner in Yuba City. He's going to be talking to musician Geith St. John Frazier, who a lot of us know locally as St. John. He's a fiddler extraordinaire, part of the One-Eyed Riley Irish band that comes up on a regular basis from Sacramento. That'll be on Tuesday, May 19th at 4 p.m. Justin France talking to St. John right here on Artist Alchemy, YubaSutter Arts Facebook page. Until then, that's it for Artist Alchemy. Thanks so much.